Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you guys, depending on where you join. This Test Studio release webinar for our latest R1 2021 version. Today we're going to talk about what's latest and greatest with our latest release. Just to present myself, the usual myself and my colleague, the usual suspects here. My name is Peter. I'm a sales engineer for Test Studio, working in a Telerik company, and with me is going to present Andrew Wiland, who is a solutions architect, working in the team as well. Just for the sake of making sure that all is good with the housekeeping and infrastructure, there is this little hand icon on your GoToWebinar panel. If you can hear me and if you can see my screen well, please click this little hand icon so that we know that everything is okay for you. Okay, I see that you're clicking it, so I guess everything is fine. If you do have any connection issues, please drop us a line in the chat so we can try to help and solve. This said, with regards to the other housekeeping rules of this webinar, today's session is going to be recorded and it is going to be made available for all of you later on to take a look and watch it. All of you guys are auto muted, so we can't hear you if you want to talk to us. In such case, please do use the questions panel. I have here as a backup actually the entire Test Studio team, which are ready to answer all of your questions. So go ahead and utilize this. What is the agenda for today? First, of course, we're going to go through the main features, the three main features that we are introducing with this R1 2021 release of Test Studio. And we are going to do a demo, a real live demo, which my colleague Andy is going to do for you guys right after each feature presentation. Right. As I mentioned, feel free to ask us questions at any time. Although by the very end of the hour, we're going to have a dedicated few minutes to answer those questions in live during the broadcast and try to address as much as possible. But as I said, I encourage you guys to shoot them in advance as we speak. And of course, as usual, there are going to be 3-4 questions during this presentation, which I'm going to start ad hoc during the webinar, right? And talking about those post questions, let's start with the first one now. I'll give you guys something around 30 seconds or so to answer this poll question, and then we'll briefly discuss the results. Thank you. Poll is open now. The question is, what's the most common reason for delays in your testing cycle? And I can see very interesting answers here. Now it's almost parity between regression testing is done manually and tests are flaky and need constant maintenance. Logical answer. And I see that also building automated tests from scratch is building up some popularity too. All right, now the poll is closed and you can see the poll results yourselves as well. Good. All right, guys. So let's continue now and with the slide deck here. So for the ones of you who are joining this webinar for the very first time and do not know or just have a very slight idea of what Test Studio actually is, so let me present it for you guys. in a nutshell. And this is our motto, our logo here, to deliver results, not bugs, with this tool. And this tool actually, as you can see on the first line, and it's a little wink to our more technical audience here. Test Studio is a tool that allows you to create codeless and or coded with C# or VB.NET tests via a standalone or a Visual Studio plugin edition, with which you can create fully functional web UI automation tests plus desktop WPF automation tests. And on top of that, you can perform full testing of a responsive app, regardless of the screen size and dimensions. Of course, on top of that, you can perform load and performance testing. On top of that, you can finish the entire QA cycle with a RESTful API data-driven tests as well. Test Studio as a tool is fully integrated with virtually any CI or CD environment that exists out there to support your continuous testing processes. Test Studio as a tool offers a patent pending, by the way, element detection based not only on DOM and element attributes, but also and or on those elements images. And of course, with Test Studio, you can remotely schedule your tests throughout different machines and share all the results within or outside of your organization with the help of the so-called executive dashboard feature. Right, with regards to technologies that we support here, as you can see on your screen, basically we support any front-end tech starting from the old school Silverlight, which is still supported going through the ASP.NET web forms or MVC and WPF tech, till the latest and greatest, which you can see on your screen, like Angular, Blazor, and React. And JavaScript, jQuery, of course, is fully supported. For the ones of you who have been attending those webinars before, you already know that this is my favorite slide, and we're constantly changing the way it looks, but the messaging still stays the same here, that with Test Studio, anybody has a seat at the Agile DevOps table, right? Which you can see on your screen. And why do we say that everybody has a seat on the table? Well, first and foremost, of course, starting with the QA department, with the quality assurance guys, which can use our fully functional standalone edition of Test Studio. On the other hand, we have the developers who are here always to help the QA department regarding with some more tricky and difficult scenarios, which would involve a coded approach. That's why we have the Test Studio Dev Edition to use. And of course, as I said, that all the results of your tests, of your schedules, can be shared with anybody within or outside your organization. Especially to make all the managers happy, we have introduced our executive dashboard, which allows you to see the results of those runs. Of course, we haven't forgotten the IT and the DevOps guys here. By the way, most of you already know that Test Studio contains within its engine Feedwork Core. Its libraries, they work under the hood for advanced web debugging. And by the way, if you want to really close the entire testing cycle, we do also offer unit testing with the help of another Telerik product called JustMock. Right, all of this, why do we say that it's the Agile DevOps table? Because actually all of this stays on top of source control, shared source control, which you can access with the help of Test Studio, whether it is TFS or Git. And of course, you can push this further into integrating your tests into your CI/CD pipeline, so that we finally reach this goal for automation with one click of a button, where the build triggers, test list starts, and you just sit and enjoy, which unfortunately doesn't happen quite often in real life, but this is what we're all aiming for. Right, now going back to the deal today, these are the three main features that we're going to that we have already actually introduced with the latest Test Studio version. What are they? First and foremost, this is the headless browser testing, where you can now execute web tests in headless mode without any additional pains and configurations in Chrome browser. We have also totally revamped our storyboard. We call it now the new storyboard. It has a bunch of cool features like improved image quality. You can see the images in the storyboard on full screen. You can zoom in, zoom out, recapture, navigate to a step across all the browsers now. And last but not least, we have the PDF content validation step, which is now accessible from our step builder, a brand new option there, where you can add steps to validate PDFs and validate data during the recording of your tests or on a later stage. Right. So this said, before we jump into details about each feature, we would start the second poll here. You already know the drill. 30 seconds about it, and then quickly sharing the results. Thank you. The question is who is involved with testing within your organization, and let's see. Really interesting results. So far, at the beginning, the majority of you were developers only, but now, as I can see, you guys lean more towards shared both QAs and devs within the dev team. Results. Yep. Thank you very much. This poll is now closed, and you can see the results on your screens. All right, good. So continuing with the presentation now, and before we go into details about headless testing in Test Studio, I am really obliged to spend a few minutes talking about what actually headless browser testing is, or just headless testing as it is popular in our industry. Well, it's just says it for its name. In headless mode, in headless browser testing, you do use a web browser to execute your end-to-end tests, but actually you are not seeing the browser UI. The browser is not on your screen. You are not doing anything with it, which drastically, of course, reduces the risk of any errors while executing those tests. But of course, one of the greatest benefits of such a headless execution is that the HTML page itself, right, is not rendered by the browser, and everything runs faster, and indeed much faster, as we have underlined here in this slide. You can you see for yourselves actually when during the demo there are like 3 times or 5 times faster execution, right? The other huge benefit, as I mentioned, is that such tests that run into headless mode actually bypass interacting with the page by any means, right? So at 100%, you are bulletproof towards any UI related failures, which you know very well that can occur when you execute in a headed mode or with the browser UI being displayed on the screen. Such headless testing, by the way, being so quick, is very convenient and actually the recommended way to be run during your out of office or outside working hours, or the so-called nightly schedules, right, of your tests, where you are not in front of the machine. You have just scheduled of your tests to run, so that you can go to the office the next morning and see if everything is fine. And you know how awkward it could be if during those nightly runs there was some UI related failure thanks to the browser, and actually you have lost all of your nightly schedules. That's why we really recommend using headless testing for those nightly schedules. Of course, talking about all of this, have in mind that the headless testing mode, it's not a substitute for the browser-based or the headed functional tests, right? They just live into the same environment and complement each other, of course, with the greatest advantage of the headless testing, that they are an amazing, really great, fast integration level tests that can help you very easy onboard anybody into your software development lifecycle, because you don't need any additional technical skills or experience in order to create and run such headless tests with Test Studio on one hand, but on the other hand, you really win a lot of time and decrease the risks, right? And these are the immediate benefits that you get with the headless browser execution here. Self-explanatory one more time: reduced time to market, proven; increased efficiency for the entire team, proven; and improved performance up to 3 or 5 times, as I said, faster execution of your tests, of your scripts and test lists. Why is this an immediate benefit, and why is it so important to have a reduced time to market? You already know the answer, of course, but in order to prove this with some little data here and statistical research from Forbes that we have gathered for 2020, right? 86% of the businesses reported in this research that there is quite an increased customer acquisition costs in the last 1 or 2 years after such acquisition, right? So in order to maximize your ROI from such acquisitions and make a more bulletproof customer retentions, there are several factors to take in mind and overcome, right? Cut time to market naturally, and develop an omni-channel touch points with the customer in order to improve your digital experience. And there we go with the headless testing that chime into this real life example, right? As far as headless testing in Test Studio is concerned, it is, as you can see, and as you already know, it is supported for Google Chrome browser. So far, it gives you 3 times quicker test execution, proven, which naturally improves the delivery and the release quality of those automated tests, right? As I said, as we mentioned, without any risk of failure due to UI, right? It is definitely faster now because it speeds up the running regression scripts, so that if speed is really important for you, this is the way, as they say in one very popular TV series, Right. The new Test Studio Chrome headless testing is also very efficient because, as we discussed, it enables everyone on the team, no matter if you're less technical or if you are the developer, to be involved, and the QA department can actually create those tests with zero effort and additional coding and configurations, right? And last but not least, this new headless testing mode is quite stable. You can basically continue to use your environment while you're executing this headless test, right? You can see how it is accessed from Test Studio on those screenshots. It is available for Chrome. Only it can be applicable to any single test or test list here without the need of any additional configuration, except for clicking the necessary button to start the headless testing. And you don't need to manually edit or configure any test steps, images, image searches, dialog handlers, or any other previously predefined and recorded actions in order to execute your test or test list in headless mode. Okay, and with this said, I'm going to pass now the screen and the mic to my colleague Andy, who is going to do a very lovely demo for you guys on this cool feature.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks everybody for joining in today as well. And hopefully you can now see my screen and hear me talking as well.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you, Peter. Great, well, I get to show off the cool stuff that Peter talks about. So here I've prepared some examples, and I want to also point out that this project I'm sharing with you today is one that both Peter and I have been working on and made available via GitHub. So there are a lot of great examples in here, of different ways in which data can be worked on, and also some examples that help you explore some of our new features. So you can yourself obtain access to this. We'll provide a link at some point through the demo, and give you the chance to clone this repo as well if you wanted to try some of these examples. Most people will probably recognize my target application here. I like to use this one because it is difficult to automate, and I love the challenge of it. So first and foremost, since we're talking about headless testing, first I'm going to show you the headed test, right? Basic test here navigates, enters a search term, and confirms that the results show up. So very basic test here. We'll just do an execution here on Edge, for example. And this is our traditional headed test. It opens up the browser on the other monitor. Let me bring it over here, and we'll watch it go through the execution. So once Amazon finishes loading everything, you'll see it start to type into the search box for drones, and then confirms that we have results that come back. That should be the test. Now coming back, we see we got 7 out of 7 passed. Let's take a look at the log really quickly and see that we had 17, almost 18 seconds of execution time that test required. Now, when I think there was a question in the chat, first of all, how do we create headless tests? You create your headless test the same way you create your headed test, using our recorder, using bits of code and things that you might need to. But generally speaking, we can do most of our testing without code. So hitting record, doing what a user does, plus the addition of our toolbar, which gives you the ability to add verifications. And sometimes what's important with headless testing is potentially waiting for elements to exist. So I've added a couple of waits there. Those can be added from our recording toolbar at the point that you're recording, and I'll show you some of that in a moment, as well as for existing elements. Since I already had a step for this, it can be added directly from here in the step builder. So with this test ready to run headlessly, we'll go ahead back to execute. You'll find Chrome headless here. If I just click the execute button here, you'll find it here. So we do have 2 Chrome icons now, the one with the little H is the headless variety. One of the benefits of headless test execution, as Peter was mentioning, is the ability for me as a tester to actually continue using my machine. And here you can see the visual debugger showing that it's currently running. But actually, one of those benefits that this provides me is I can continue working. I don't have to give up my mouse and keyboard controls as you typically do with a headed test. So this really benefits us in a lot of ways, and really allows you to do more, while those tests are running unattended, essentially. Now, it looks like we may have a failure. I may have actually caused that myself. I'll give this a quick rerun after we take a look at the failure details. Looks like we had a page not found. You do see that there are still images, right? So things that you can still do with headless testing is images are captured, image verifications still work. So you do have a lot of ability with your tests to run the same kinds of tests that you do headed as a headless test as well. So we'll give this another go real quick. I promised prior to this it was working perfectly, but as you can see, there are weights in there for a reason, because we do use timeouts on those weights. It can allow for the ample amount of time. It looks like I may just need to double check that Amazon isn't prompting me for a password. I believe that might be what it's looking for currently. So we'll take a quick look at that. And let's see here, do a quick run to here just to make sure everything is copacetic. All looks good. And we'll give it one more go here. So of course I chose a public application here instead of one that we have private control over. So of course I am subject to anything that Amazon may throw at us. So my apologies for that coming up into play. While that's actually running, let's take a look at some other tests that we could run headlessly as well. This one's going into some of our Blazor coffee application. As you can see, there's a number of different steps with drop downs and toggles. And as you are migrating a test from headed execution to headless, there may be functions you want to add, or as I mentioned, wait times that you want to add to make sure that that test can execute headlessly without issue. And that's really just part of your normal troubleshooting process. The benefits of taking time to create a powerful and what we call bulletproof tests far outweighs the time it takes to execute the test. So building it stably up front the first time can help you make sure you have a very robust test that can function for you. And so you can see here we do have some objects that may still need a little bit of time to render. So quickly here we can do a verification to wait for it to exist. We can reposition that where we need it in the test and kind of further strengthen. So as you're working through these tests to make them ready for headless execution, that's typically the main culprit that you'll see there for the headless to operate correctly. In the case of Amazon, unfortunately, it looks like my demo gods are frowning upon me. They have an additional security layer, it looks like, for me to be able to execute. However, that was not present moments before the webinar. So we'll try it again here just to see. But my apologies that wasn't flawless like we had planned. With that, I'll pass it back to Peter and we'll get into the next topic.
Yep. Thank you very much, Andy, for sharing this with us. By the way, guys, while we were on the demo, I allowed myself to take a quick peek at the questions that you have, and honestly, I saw a lot of interesting ones. So if you allow me just to address and mention out loud some of them, while we're still on the topic of headless browser testing, and not wait till the very end of the webinar, when of course still we're going to answer the questions. But now let's do it for the headless testing, because literally there are a lot of cool and interesting questions out there, which I would like to address, starting with some questions which point that maybe some of you guys might be confusing. I'm a little bit confused. I'm reading questions like, I'm quite confused. How does this help me? I mean headless browser testing, help me if I can't rely on it and I have to perform standard headed browser testing as well. You don't need to be confused. First of all, as we mentioned, those two types of tests are complementary. They don't exclude each other. They complement each other. Actually, I advise you not to go only into the headed or only into the headless mode, but just to take the benefits of both worlds and approaches. Why is that? As I said, yes, you need to create your test first, and while creating these tests and while executing them the very first few times, of course, you need to go into the full browser mode, headed mode, in order to see how everything behaves. But as time progresses, you need to run those scenarios that you have created a lot of times, maybe constantly, make them recurring every 30 minutes or whatever, or you just need to test something in advance, and let's say you need to run quickly this scripts 10 times. While here is where the benefit of a real headless browser test execution comes into play. Because if you need to recur and have 100 iterations of your test till tomorrow, you can do the math while you want to wait for each of these iteration, which will take you 2 or 3 minutes to execute, or switch them into headless mode, which will take up to between 3 to 5 times quicker to accomplish. Right. So as we said, those tests complement each other. Create your tests, see how they go in UI mode, and then when all you need to do is just schedule them to run, go into fully headless.
And Peter, I did
mode.
find a better example if you want
yeah,
to.
Of course. Sure. Yep. Go ahead.
Forgive me. Yeah, I appreciate the patience. So, and this really speaks to what Peter was just mentioning as well. This test being a login test that has been data driven. So we have multiple iterations here that are running, and this, as you can see, could be run headlessly. Again, while you're doing other things and accomplishing other goals. So that's a very big use case. In fact, we have many tests that we're running that go through hundreds of iterations, and it can take up your application, can take up your computer, especially if you're executing on your local machine, and can take that up and keep it occupied for quite a while. So running it headlessly does a great job with this. You can see here in the log how it's using the headless version, and really how an iteration takes really 4.5 seconds there. In fact, the second iteration looks like it took 2 seconds there. So very, very responsive, very quick, lots of time saved by taking a test and running it headlessly. And I should mention too that in your test lists, ultimately, this is where you'll put together your tests for for the CI/CD pipelines, for your nightly executions. You might schedule, you might call these test lists to run. So when we're over here, we have finished building the tests, and now we've organized them in test lists. And inside of these test lists, within the settings, you'll see under the web tab, the executing browser options. And here's where you'll find Chrome headless as well. So you can set up your test list, and you might have certain test lists you run headlessly and those that you run headed. Oftentimes for some of our customers, they may run quick smoke tests headlessly across all the development environments. As you can see, there's a production and a staging type of test list in the background. So I might have a version of these test lists that run headlessly. And then after those pass, essentially, I might have a more functional test that's going to exercise the application headed that might be running, following that. So sometimes people will use it in that type of format, but this is where you'll find that for a test list execution setting. Sorry, thanks again, Peter, for letting me jump back in there. I'll pass it back to you.
Of course, no problems. Lovely demo. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's continue with the presentation and show you the second feature that we have introduced with this release. This is the PDF content validation, and let me actually switch into full presentation mode here. Shift and F5, there we go. So what are the immediate benefits of such a PDF content validation feature that we have introduced? Of course, now you can do absolutely full automation of any common PDF scenario on the web that exists out there, thus eliminating any workaround or dependency of using any third-party tools when you need to do PDF content validation. You know how cumbersome this could be. And of course, in terms of RPA, robotic processing automation needs for your internal apps, let's say, it really would facilitate such automation process with this feature. Thanks to it, now we do have a much wider coverage of various test automation scenarios, thanks to checking if such PDF files are generated correctly, or whether the populated data meets some business or user requirements whatsoever. This new feature now allows you, as I said, full automation of the PDFs. You don't need any additional extension, setup, configuration, or workaround or third-party tool, as we mentioned, in order to do that. It is again happens thanks to a click of a button by generating a new open PDF step from our step builder, which you guys are gonna see during the demo part. Maybe most of you know that PDF files are one of the main pillars into the RPA processes, and RPA itself relies on processing such information through this specific PDF format according to some predefined rules. Right. So now, if you want to take advantage and do full RPA, take a look at this new feature of Test Studio, or if you are to test some business systems and applications like CRM systems, ERPs, BI systems, you already know that Test Studio has a lot of cool features that allow you to do that. But on top of that, now with the content validation of PDF files, we go even further, so that you can check that everything with your dynamically, for example, generated data sheets, price lists, whatever is in form of a PDF is fine and tested. Right. How it works. Here you can see from this example, we are automating a price list of some specific brand. It's not a paid ad, by the way, that we're doing here. All you need to do literally is open and load the PDF with this new step that exists in the step builder. Then you can verify any text portion of this PDF file, and or verify any image that is available in this PDF file. And by the way, you already know that we do have the OCR optical character recognition feature that we introduced a bunch of releases before. Those features work great in conjunction with the PDF files as well, thus causing the cycle of the full PDF files automation. Right, and with this said, it's again demo time, and again passing the mic to Andy to show you some cool stuff.
Thanks again, Peter. All right, so coming back, we're going to give this test another chance. I'm going to actually use the run to here function to maybe add on to the end of this test with a PDF scenario. So I'm picking on Chromium Edge here to do my recording in, and we'll have that spin up. So this is run to here, executing steps 1 through 8, and then attaching the recording toolbar, leaving me in a record mode essentially. Now the PDF step that Peter mentioned, you don't have to be in a live record mode to add this to your test. I just happen to want to show you the ability to jump in and enter live record mode. And as you can see now, the recording toolbar is attached. That means we are in that live record mode. We can see all the steps have passed. And let's say for the sake of this demo, I need to add a PDF step here for a local PDF. You'll see in the step builder under common, we do have a lot of steps like test to step, a lot of built-in things here for you to utilize. And of course, Open PDF is the brand new one. We can double click to add this to our test. And here it's asking me for the file path of that particular PDF. So I will drop in a file path for my local PDF here. And of course, showing you another technique, since I'm still in this live record mode, I can actually just go ahead and run this selected step and have it enter into that record mode on the PDF. So this will now open up the PDF for me, the local PDF, in a tab in the browser. And now I have a testable environment. We can turn on the element highlighter here, which allows us to see the application through the lens of Test Studio. And just like any other type of web UI, this PDF is transformed into something that Test Studio now can interact with. And what I mean by this is when we see this element highlighter highlighting these individual elements, individual wordings and layers, that means it's really interpreting all of that information where previously a PDF may have just been seen as a large block of text. Now, if there is a case where you've got a large block of text or an image-based item, we have taken care of that with our OCR, where you can actually grab and take text out of an image. However, this PDF validation and capability goes even further than that, right? It presents it in a web viewer and allows us to interact with it and record it like a normal web page. So some things that you'll want to be aware of, we certainly want to make sure as we interact that we take advantage of these controls. This will allow me to type in a page, for example, to navigate the PDF rather than having to scroll. This tends to be a lot more useful when you're navigating a PDF. And you can, of course, use your paging and so forth from up here. But let's take a look at, for example, this little node. As you can see, we can come in and actually verify that it says test plan. And again, as we look at that quick steps menu, we can see that it does give me the text content of that element. So I don't need OCR for this. OCR is when I don't necessarily have access to highlight the individual element inside of that. It would be used to maybe more extract from an image. But let's go ahead and do some paging while we're here. And maybe we'll do one more verification along the way. Okay. So again, you've got lots of flexibility to work with your test creation process. We'll go ahead and close the browser down and see these new steps that were all captured here for me. And of course, we can re-execute this as well to see that play out. Now, you can also, of course, execute your PDF tests headlessly as well. So I had the question last week, how long would it take to validate 500 PDFs? Well, obviously, PDFs can all be in different sizes and so forth, but we were able to prove that a PDF headed test ran in about a minute, doing some validations through that PDF. We ran it headlessly. It took 12 seconds. So, 5x improvement there. But again, all of this together, all of these components kind of bringing you more capability, more flexibility, so that you can create and build consistent and robust tests and execute them in a way that makes the most sense for your particular needs. So there you have it, execution there of the PDF validation. And I'll pass it back to my correspondent, Peter.
Thank you very much, Andy. A lovely demo as usual. So we do have, guys, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so till the end of this webinar. What remains now is to talk about and show you, of course, the third feature that we introduced with this release. It is the Test Studio new storyboard, the revamped storyboard that we did. What are the immediate benefits of this redesign? First, you have much better visual interaction with your recorded tests, right? Which allows you, of course, to better understand the entire test logic of your scripts. And last but not least, now you can very easily onboard any new users and members of your team. Right. The new storyboard, it really provides a very good abstraction of the understanding of the test logic when you visually see what's happening. The interface, the UI is new and improved. It allows you it results in an easy visual interaction with the recorded tests, which results in, again, saving time and boosting your productivity. With the new Test Studio Storyboard, you can get quite an essential information about your tests based on capturing the entire test flow in images, and you will see how you can very easily, for example, scroll between the different images for the corresponding steps during the demo, so that you can really understand better and faster what you're actually recording for your script. And as we mentioned, it does facilitate and does a really good job in facilitating the onboarding with Test Studio of any new member, new users, or in shared projects if you have, right, where a lot of people work together, because a visual representation is quite easy there. How it looks like and what are the new features here, you can see first on this animated GIF, and of course during the live demo, but to list the new features, first, better image quality. All of the images can be displayed on full screen mode now, which allows you to zoom in and zoom out on such a specific image. Every single image per the step can be inspected, or if you have a test step, for example, on a click, you can go to such test step from the images. And you also have the ability to recapture the images. Of course, all browsers are fully supported. Right. Okay, so it is demo time, and Andy, back to you. By the way, Andy, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I got my screen back up here. So the storyboard, one of the best ways to show you this was really to come to what we refer to as a parent test that has multiple test steps within them. As you can see, when you double click on one, it opens in a new tab. But this is a modular type of test. If you haven't and you're not using this, it's up here in our test step builder. But if we flip over to Storyboard, which is now located in the bottom left tabs, you see that since this is comprised of subtests, we don't have many images at this layer. However, as you can see here, it says double click and it takes us into that subtest where we can then look at the images. So now you have this drill down capability to get from the parent test into the subtests into any test steps as well. So really good to have that connection. You also have a bit of a layout option you can choose from as well. If you prefer to have your preview images here and then the main image here. And you can then, of course, click into the image to go even further into a high quality image, and of course, even zoom further if you need to. As you can see, this is sort of a smallish highlight. This is the highlight of the execution, what's happening during this step. So if you have something you need to zoom in on, you can certainly do so with that preview. So much greater and easier to work with than the old Storyboard. And then what's great too is I can go directly back to the test step by clicking in this test step option from here, and it takes me back to the test step. So you can flip back and forth with the tabs, or you can double click into the test itself, or sorry, click into the step description itself to go into the steps. So really useful. Again, the images are something that are automatically captured during the recording process. There is also the ability to recapture those images up here if your images need to be updated, and also export those to an HTML document. I will tell you one of the most common uses of the exported HTML version of these is to actually use them for user guides. So because the images are really nice, it's easy to take a step-by-step process like this that's automatically captured for you and reutilize those in some of your user guides or in some of your other documentation. And that is the new Storyboard feature.
Thank you very much, Andy, about it. Guys, what follows now is the Q&A session, but before that, the third poll question remains. So let's kick it off, and I'll give you 30 seconds to answer this poll question and then share the results. The question is, what's the biggest risk of bug slipping into production? Very hard competition between the first two options, critical internal business processes and poor end user experience. Right, thank you very much for your input. And now we are sharing the results for all of you. All right, so thank you very much. Again, for your feedback, it's really very valuable for us. Now, just to let you know that you are in good hands with the Test Studio team. We have a lot of online documentation information to help you get started. We really have a stellar and interesting leading tech support channel, so I encourage you to give it a try if you haven't done it yet. We also offer services like standard or customized training, mentoring, consulting, etc. if you need it. Our releases, as you know, are between 4 to 8 weeks, including early compatibility versions. So this set, I would really want to spend a few minutes with all of you and try and address some of the interesting questions. And there are some really cool questions now in our questions panel. Here, I see that the team here is doing a great job answering them, but of course, me and Andy can share out loud some.
And Peter, I just want to let people know I did drop a link in the chat to the GitHub repo for the project, the sample project that we are showing today.
Perfect. Yeah, I really encourage you to take a look at this as well, because there are a bunch of numerous scenarios that you can utilize and help you building your tests, including, of course, the new features that you saw today. For example, and I saw a question here from one of our customers. Let me just see where it was. Who asked if it is possible for Test Studio to write into system files. If I remember correct the question, yeah, it is definitely possible. And actually, we have a lot of examples in this project, shared project that Andy put into the chat that show you how, for example, you can write to a SQL database, or you can write to a static file, which is saved on your a machine, etc., etc., etc. Of course, in some of those scenarios, if not in the majority of them, some coded skills would be C# and VB.NET coded skills will be needed. But as I said, we already have the examples predefined. So basically, what you need is just copy paste the code, right? I also see that there was a lot of positive vibes for the PDF validation feature, and thank you very much for this. There was a question: does the PDF content validation work with PDFs that are exported programmatically using Telerik reporting, which is another tool of our company? And yes, of course, we should be working fine with such exported PDFs. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. Another interesting question here. You said,
one more thing just to say on that topic. You can also data drive the PDF file path. When you talk about the options of being able to data drive things, that's one thing that can be data driven in the PDF step. So if you do need to, let's say, loop through multiple outputs or parameterize that, it is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it will save you really a lot of time when you do data drive those numerous PDF files that you might have. Another question, citing here, as you said, all CI/CD are supported. Does that include GitLab, and how to include the testing GitLab YAML files? Yep. First, we do have documentation how to do the integration with most of the popular CI/CD systems that exist there already. For the past year or so, GitLab is really getting a lot of popularity. We do have an example how to do it on Git environment with the help of our CLI. So basically, it is possible. Take a look at our available documentation here, and if you need some assistance, we'll be glad to help you how to set this up. Right. Okay. What else do I see here? There was a really nice question. My system is running on React. Does it interfere with headless execution? So you shouldn't be worried at all. React as a front-end tech here is fully supported by Test Studio, no matter if it is headless or headed technology. So we got you safe here. Right. Let's see if there is something else here which we can address in the meantime.
There was a question around the remote execution. We do have, of course, from our licensing standpoint, the Test Studio runtime, which is optimized to use in, especially in CI/CD integration cases, or in cases where you have a test lab that you want to create of multiple virtual machines or physical machines. You would utilize that runtime license to do that, and those can be connected together to our scheduling service and our storage service so that multiple machines could be executing tests simultaneously from your project.
Yep. There were commands how to get headless testing. You saw it. You need to scroll down from the list of the available browsers in order to find Google headless. Can I use my Google Chrome browser while it is running in headless mode? No, you cannot. You can use any other browser that is available on your machine except for Google Chrome browser, because while we're not displaying its UI, still its engine is working under the hood while executing there. Another question about headless, are there any features of headed mode testing that you would not be able to do it in headless mode? I haven't thought and I haven't encountered so far such scenarios. Basically, whatever is available in headed mode should go fine into a headless. So far, so good. Just have in mind, of course, during the headless automation, because of the increased speed of the execution, sometimes on occasions, you might have kind of a failure due to such sync issues. That's why we would encourage just to add a quick wait for verification step, for example, but it is very case specific and it's not the original universal recipe. Here it is just a possible scenario that could happen while you execute in headless mode compared to headed. Right. Okay, let's see what else.
I think we're about 5 minutes over.
Yeah.
And I know we have some follow-up that will be coming out. Of course, this is recorded, so you'll receive an email about how to access the recording. Is there anything else that you wanted to address, I guess, Peter, before we?
No, we're pretty much all set, as you can see. Thanks to the team, by the way, who was doing a great job answering those questions. And I guess with all of you guys, we'll be in touch. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I hope it was really useful for you, and see you and hear you next time. Thank you and have a nice remaining of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.